Hi, I'm Joe Harroz, president of the University of Oklahoma. I want to welcome you to our Conversations with the President. This platform gives me the chance to talk to some of the great people who make OU so special. Make sure you're subscribed to Conversations with the President, and you'll be the first to know when new episodes are released. Let's get started. Welcome back to Conversations with the President. We are now on the second of two episodes with our provosts. And if you think these were recorded on the same day, you're right. But I've taken off my tie, which I used for the first one. And so this feels fundamentally different. We're thrilled that you're back. We hope that you have subscribed to this podcast. If you haven't, we really wish you would. It'd mean a lot to us and to me personally. So thanks for considering it. And today is the second of two provosts. It's really a two-provost series of episodes. I'm here with André Denis-Wright, who is a dear friend, just like Gary, someone with whom I've worked for the last now over 2 years. And I'd love for them to get to know you. André, why don't you tell them, the folks that are listening, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Joe. I'm another Canadian. I grew up in Nova Scotia, grew up in a small community of Beachville with about 350 people, and went to university there, did my graduate training outside Toronto in the University of Guelph, and then went off to Australia, where I spent 12 years working at CSIRO designing vaccines and working as a microbiologist, and then I moved to the U.S. in 2009.
Fantastic. And the reference to the second Canadian, both of our provosts were originally Canadian.
Bizarre, huh?
It is.
Second largest country in the world by size, and Gary and I went to graduate schools about 30 minutes apart from each other.
That's fantastic. We're lucky to have both of you. So you were in Perth, Australia.
Correct.
And then you came to the U.S. Tell us about your journey in academia.
Sure. When I worked at CSIRO, I was working as a government scientist designing vaccines.
All right, CSIRO, what's that?
It's an acronym for Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. It's the nation's research agency in the top 1% in the world. And so I was very fortunate to have a position there for almost 12 years. But I really wanted to be in academia. I really wanted to teach. I enjoyed teaching. And so we moved to the U.S. in 2009. I was at the University of Vermont as a first-time department chair in academia with unionized faculty, and leading the department there for 5.5 years, still doing research. I was then fortunate enough to go to the University of Arizona, where I was the inaugural director of biomedical sciences, still doing research and leading faculty and staff there. And then my last position before coming here, I was Dean of Agriculture, Human and Natural Resource Sciences at Washington State University.
Which is their largest college.
Largest college, $200 million budget, and brought in about a third of the, almost half of the research expenditure.
When you came in during the search process, we met at Benvenuti's.
We did.
This is not a paid advertisement for them, but really good food.
It was really good.
And you and I were there, and I knew almost immediately you were the right person for the job. We just connected, and I loved your energy, your background, and I just knew you'd do special things. And you really, in the last 2 years, are transforming the role and doing remarkable work. But a lot of folks don't know what a provost does. We heard from our previous guest, your fellow provost and fellow former Canadian, about what happens at the Health Sciences Center. Tell us what a provost does on the Norman campus.
Well, in the past 2 weeks, it's been working with my senior vice provosts and the deans, making sure we had open sections and classes for our record-shattering incoming class. But a lot of my time is spent looking at the 140, 170 undergraduate programs we have, constantly looking at adding, deleting courses, program changes, including experiential learning opportunities for students, looking at study abroad, study away, and also hiring faculty and looking at strategic hirings of faculty, and other administrators on campus, but really concentrating on student success.
So how many colleges on the Norman campus report to you?
16 colleges.
So all 16 colleges report to you. That in and of itself is a huge undertaking. You have other things that come under that, and things that might not be intuitive, like the recruitment of students.
Yes.
Yeah. So Jeff Bolanic's operation is under you. You take 100% credit for the record-shattering as you articulated at class this year.
Every bit, yes.
Right, that's right. That's what good leaders do. They just take all the credit.
No, Jeff Blonick and his team has done an amazing job.
Yeah, and it's really a unique time in higher education. So talk about the environment for undergraduates changed a lot. We know that there's this paradox going on nationally where the sentiment towards higher education is a declining sentiment, but the need for higher education in our workforce has never been greater. What is it that you think is the source of this problem nationwide, and why are we counter-trend? Why are we growing when so many other campuses are atrophying?
Sure. Jill, let me tell you a quick little story. I grew up in a very small community that was established by freed and runaway slaves. I was raised by a single mother, and it was my family, my community, my mother's determination that I go to university. Education has changed my life. My daughter will never know what it's like to go to bed hungry, go to bed without water, electricity, or heat in cold Canadian winters. And so I know firsthand, being a first generation, how education can change your entire direction and outlook and how you proceed further. Here in Oklahoma, you heard from the previous provost that we have urgent needs in terms of healthcare. We have other workforce needs. We know that artificial intelligence is just now starting, and it's going to be exploding. We have concerns with cybersecurity. And so we need an educated workforce. We need education now more than ever, even on how we approach and how we talk to different people. And so that respect and civility, I think university is an excellent place where you develop and grow, and we need that to better ourselves as a society and move forward.
Yeah, it's remarkable. One of the things that I'm so proud of, we talk about, you and I talk a lot about, how do we position the university? But it's not just a market share question. It's a question of why do we exist? What's our why? And just as you indicated for you and your family, it does change lives. It's not just a slogan. We do change lives every day. And when you think about why states, while the support has been declining nationwide for a while for public research universities, and you think about the three reasons states support them, right? It's so individuals have the opportunity that don't have the economic ability to change their lives. And it's so states can have greater economic prosperity. And it's also, as you indicated, it's also to make sure that we have the educated citizenry to support the democracy itself. In that record-shattering class, you yourself and you alone brought in here, the statistic I'm most proud of isn't the highest GPA ever, and it's not the fact that it's the greatest number of students. It's the fact that over 1/4 of those students are just like you were, right? Just like my father was. Mm-hmm. The first in the history of their family, to go past high school. And that's why public research universities exist. And, what I love about you and your story is you don't forget that. And we see it in the eyes of the students, both when they come in their first year. We saw that a few days ago, and then we see the culmination of that at graduation. And that's stunning, and your contribution to that is really meaningful. What does it mean to be great in higher ed? As you think about your leadership of the Norman campus, what is it that you think about? Like, what is the secret to setting records in terms of number of students, to having, this class? Another big record is it's just under 40%. Mm-hmm. Individuals from historically underrepresented communities, right? Why is this working?
I think the secret here is our people. I think our faculty are outstanding. Our staff are incredible. Oklahomans have treated my family and I amazingly well. And you hear a lot about different areas in the country where people are very friendly, very nice. Having lived in the Northeast, the Northwest, and in Arizona, people here are super welcoming, super friendly. So, as I said before, huge credit to Jeff Blonick and his team for bringing students here that they feel automatically welcomed on campus. Even when I was looking at, when I was back in Washington State looking at whether to come here or not, this place is a sleeping giant. And there's just so much opportunity here, and so many more things that we can do. We do a lot of incredible things for our students and our faculty and staff, and there's even much more that we can do. So it's exciting coming from the outside, coming in here, asking a lot of questions. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Have you considered this? Why could we do this? And having things come together and building up and maintaining that family focus and just making people feel welcomed and belonged.
Yeah, there's a lot of power behind feeling like you belong somewhere.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's especially, you see it. We just welcomed that class, and we had all of those first year freshmen in the stadium, and you can just see what all of us felt on our first day of college. Right, that they're trying, they're excited, they're nervous, they're full of self-doubt, and they're full of optimism and ambition and angst. And I think that when you know that, when you know that you belong and you're wanted, it makes all the difference in the world. All right, so when you're now 2 years into this, we see all these great numbers. What does success look like to you in the next 3 to 4 years?
Great question. So still going in an upward trajectory, significantly increasing our retention rate.
That's higher ed speak. What does retention rate mean?
These are the first year students that return and come back for a second year.
Yeah.
Also making huge changes for our 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year graduation rates. As a Canadian who went to school, got 3 degrees. My total student loans was $9,000 US, and that was just for my bachelor's degree. My master's and my PhDs were free. And so, also as a father of a daughter who will be going to university next fall, it's keeping costs down. It's getting people out in a timely manner, and having fun. Yeah. And getting the degrees and getting the opportunities and the experiential learning that is offered to them.
Yeah, and I'm smiling right now because you did not say yet that Montana, your daughter, has committed to coming to OU. So I was going through this last year. My oldest, Joseph, had not made his mind up, and I had to hedge. You're now hedging. But you and I have both been engaged actively in recruiting Montana.
Correct.
Yeah, and if she doesn't come, it's not an option.
It is not an option.
It's not an option. But it to me, it's so much fun to see the recruitment process through the eyes of your own, I was going to say child, but they're not children, your own young adult, because you do see a different perspective. And I love how much it changes our conversations as we talk about how do we make the University of Oklahoma better. A lot of that comes from our experiences with our own families and being a part of that community, which is a different perspective for us.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, and so I love those conversations. What else does success look like? We talked about the percent of students that graduate that succeed while they're here. What are other indicators?
Being able to recruit, hire faculty, retain faculty, as well as staff. And seeing increases in our study abroad, study away, more experiential learning. I think getting students access and opportunity to everything that we have to offer and seeing them succeed and graduate and move into meaningful careers, that would make me very, very happy.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about a lot is the changing nature of students. As the cost has increased, students and their families have become a lot more business-minded, a lot more transactional about what is the value for a university. And we see in our own state and across the country where over the last 5 years, many universities have shrunk by 20, 30%. And we talk a lot about the value proposition for the university and how we articulate that in a way. And I to me, in our conversations, I find it fascinating that really what we're trying to provide for the on-ground student today, really for all students, it's very similar to what an honors program looked like 20 years ago in a lot of ways. Yeah, I mean, this idea of doing study abroad, this idea of having an undergraduate research focus, and one of your priorities has been increasing undergraduate research. Will you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. When I was at the University of Vermont, I was still an active researcher. I had postdocs, I had PhD students. I opened my lab up to having undergraduate students in my lab. In the 5.5 years that I was there, I probably had about 40 different undergraduate students go through my lab. 6 of them went on to publish papers as first author, getting into vet school. Many of those students that came through my lab are now my colleagues. And so that is a lot of fun. My graduate students as well. I had undergraduates working in my lab in Arizona. Didn't have too much. Didn't have a lab when I was in Washington State. I was busy doing dean duties. But when I came here, one of the things that I was excited about was putting together an office for undergraduate research and creative activity, which we called Eureka. And for the last 2 years, we've been able to give out 50 scholarships or grants of $5,000 each to allow students to work in someone's lab or theater, and also another 50 $1,000 scholarships to support students working in someone's lab.
Yeah, I mean, it really does change. I mean, it's fascinating, right? Like this idea of generative AI and how it is, without a doubt, changing everything in our society. I mean, it's fascinating. We're on two fronts right now, right? We think about the impact of generative AI. We think about the prospect and the near advent of quantum computing. You can't just be the same old university that existed not just 20 years ago, but not even 5 years ago. And I've loved your innovation around what we're doing. And a lot of this is to innovate around the students and their success. Would you talk about your leadership and your vision for those areas?
With the Polytechnic Institute, you mentioned about artificial intelligence. It's like decades ago when the calculator came out.
Yeah.
You have to embrace it and work with it. Same thing here. AI is not going away. We have to embrace it. We have to be able to work with it. But we also need people that can program in AI and use large data. So one of our programs, our second degree offering for the second year of PI is going to be artificial intelligence and software programming. The first degree that we got approved is cybersecurity. As you know, ransomware attacks continue to increase. We're always under cyber threat. Individuals with identity theft, but also institutions, businesses, and even the nation. And so preparing that new bunch of graduates that can come out, that can identify cyber threats, protect against cyber threats, detect, respond, and recover is what we need in the future.
And I love the Polytech because it speaks directly to the nature of students today. That is, the question we get more frequently than ever is this question of, if I go to college, what will I get out of it? And we've known forever, and it's totally true today, more true today than ever. And you can say things that, look, over the course of your lifetime, aside from being more fulfilled, you will earn more than $1 million or $1.5 million over your lifetime than you would if you didn't go and earn your bachelor's degree. There's a lot of folks that still say, well, we know the labor market's been good, unemployment rate has been low. Why wouldn't I just go ahead and take a job today and not go to school? And one of my favorite direct answers, which doesn't require the maturity to think about your career earning potential or your overall sort of value and worth of your career, right, is this idea of pointing to the Polytech as a good example. In 1 year when this has stood up, we know that there are so many jobs and so much demand. There's way more demand than there are individuals that are trained in these areas that will train you in through the Polytech. And we know that for these areas, whether it's cybersecurity or any of the areas we're looking at, that the starting salaries right now are $75,000 to $80,000 starting salary. And then they can work through the math very quickly that's better than just going out and taking a job directly.
Correct.
And not just 5 years, 10 years, 30 years from now, but within just a few years. So I love that. I'm excited about it. And you hired Dr. Terry Reed, and the two of you all are leading that.
Yeah, she's doing a great job. We're excited about having faculty coming on board soon, getting the next 2 degrees approved, and then we have 2 more degrees after that.
Yeah, and we're actually hiring new professors. A lot of places are shrinking. We're an interesting place, right, in that over the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of institutions over that time period took on so much debt and had such problems with their financials that they're contracting in lots of ways that aren't healthy. We went in over the last 5 years, we cut over $140 million in costs, but we're now investing in remarkable ways that many places aren't. Could you talk about our investments around faculty and what we're doing?
Sure. When I was sitting back, wondering about the opportunities that provided in Oklahoma and whether I would move my family here or not, I had been at 3 previous institutions, all had great strategic plans, all were aspirational. When I was looking at the strategic plan here, I actually thought, wow, this actually looks attainable. And so being part of a strategic plan that you can actually implement and put in place was really exciting. But my former institution had a 2-year hiring freeze. To my knowledge, there were only 2 institutions in the country that were still doing large numbers of faculty hires during COVID, and University of Oklahoma was one of them. And so the opportunity to come here, be part of this team, be part of a strategic plan that we can drive forward, and to hire 150 additional new faculty was really, really exciting. And so as a provost coming into a new school, coming in and growing and building is really, really exciting, as opposed to going into a school and having to cut things and close things down. And so it was really exciting for me to come here and for my family to come here as well. And in the 2 years I've been here now, we've hired 41 additional new faculty through this process. And we will hire probably another 25 new faculty in this financial year.
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel about this, but to me, I love the idea that we operate with financial discipline and a very clear plan. So we're not hiring these in the blind. We're not betting on something in the future. We have 5 to 7 year budget models. We are very cautious about where we are financially, but we know that these investments are strategic, and these will move the needle for our students in our state. And it's fun to be a part of that and to watch you hire these individuals. It's
been a lot of fun. And the first year I was here, we had a competitive process. Our approval rate percentage was about 1/3. And so from that, we'll have another round fairly soon. We'll be encouraging colleges to put forward their proposals and cross-disciplinary research and strategic directions that we want to take at the university.
Yeah, that what distinguishes a university today, the truly great universities, to me, it is synonymous with being among the research elites in the country. And we're moving aggressively into that space. We've talked about how do we achieve a ranking called AAU status, and we're driven towards that because we know that nothing stays static, and there's an increasing separation between universities that only teach and those that are truly research intensive. You're not just the provost, you're also the senior vice president and provost. So as the chief academic officer of the Norman campus and here at the university, tell us about the research enterprise. Where is that going, and how does this fit into the new hires and the direction of the university?
The research enterprise led by Tomas Diaz de la Rubia has been making marked increases over the last couple of years in terms of research expenditures coming back into the university. Through our SRIFRA process, these are the additional 150 new strategic hires. We're looking at investing those hires into key areas of the university, aligned with, but not, only to, but aligned with the verticals, our research verticals. And so we are seeing more collaborations amongst people, researchers. Just over the last 2 years, we've hired engineers, economists, social workers, and our anthropologists to work with our oncologists in the Stevenson Cancer Center to look at detection, prevention, and cures of different cancer types. So we're seeing a lot more cross-disciplinary, bringing together different groups of scientists. And so as a former researcher, I've been involved in those groups where we've had, as a microbiologist, I've worked with immunologists, I've worked with nutritionists, economists as well. And we all see things differently. And being able to have that diversity of thought and coming at it if we were just a group of microbiologists, we probably wouldn't have had some of the solutions or the ideas that we had when we got the transdisciplinary nature of the research. So really promoting strategic directions, where our strengths are, and building on those critical strengths, and having a better or even a closer alignment with researchers at HSC. I think that's very, very important.
I think the Stevenson example is such a great example. We spoke with Gary Raskob about Stevenson Cancer Center and how impactful it is, but you're right, there are so many disciplines from the Norman campus that intersect and enhance and add to the vitality and the outcomes from Stevenson Cancer. Yeah. All right, let's talk about service. We always talk about teaching, research, and service. What do you see as the service aspect of the university, and are you seeing growth around there?
Sure. One of the things I was really pleasantly surprised by was the amount of service that is being done by faculty as well as staff. And so one of the things that we've tried to do in the Provost's office was to increase the amount of awards that we have for service, to recognize people that are doing service that sometimes gets overlooked, and also service by people that are continually tapped on the shoulder because they'll say yes,
right.
Who also do service in that regard. So we try to recognize service, we try to recognize it with awards, but also being mindful that we should be, encouraging service by everybody, and not just some people that continually do it because that's what they are programmed or wired to do, but to try to make it more fair across the institution.
Yeah. André, I could talk to you for the next 2 or 3 hours. We've done it plenty of times. I know that you hate praise and attention, so I'm going to praise you while we're in this podcast. You've been here 2 years. You are fundamentally changing the university in such a positive way, and you and your family are a huge part of the community. Appreciate everything you're doing for us. I hope you know how much you're valued. And for those that are listening right now, the last 2 years have been remarkable, but you haven't seen anything yet. Provost is leading us in exciting directions. We're honored to have, while y'all were just 30 minutes away in Canada, we have the two best provosts in the world out of Canada here in the U.S. So beyond grateful, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your leadership. I've been blessed coming here. I'm surrounded by fantastic people. My deans are fantastic. My associate and vice provosts are fantastic. And my directors and the provost direct reports are excellent to work with. So very fortunate to work with incredibly gifted people.
We'll just do maybe an entire episode later on kind of a breakout of your thoughts on my leadership and how much you like it for our next podcast.
Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you for joining Conversations with the President. To have both of our provosts, now the Norman Campus Provost, André Denis-Wright, with us was a pure joy. Please join us again. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Conversations with the President.